Hello everyone, welcome to another Average Angler video. Today we have a 4-day festival at Ship Lake. So just explain how the festival is going to work. First day is a random draw, which you could draw on any one of 4 sections, and then once you've drawn on that section you will then just rotate around with the same people in your section across the 4 different sections. There's 3 lakes here at Ship Lake. There's the main lake, which has 2 sections on it, one on either bank, and then there's 2 canal lakes, Westpool and Hawthorns. There's a payout for the overall top 3, and there will be payouts on the day, each day, for first and second in section. So that's the format. There we are. Let's have a look at where we've drawn on the first day. So we've drawn on peg 7, which is like end of the section on main pool. I've had peg 7 only 4 or 5 days ago in one of the cost cutters here, and so I've got a bit of inside info, and I nearly got in the frame off it. It's not a fancied area, but the wind was blowing in that day. And the fish did come down to the left-hand margin. You have to fish long down to a tree. So I'm hoping that I can do the same again today. There's odd fish showing now and again, and there's definitely fish shallow in front of me on this swim, but because it's a bit overcast, they're not easy to see. So I feel like mugging's probably not going to be an option. I may have to try and fish shallow long, which was totally not successful last time I was on peg 7. So I feel like it's going to be a late show today. If I'm going to get any result on this peg, it's going to be late on. But I am up against peg 1, which is a very, very good peg, and peg 3, which is a very, very good peg in this section, and they've both got excellent anglers on, so fingers crossed for me. So pretty quickly, half an hour, 40 minutes or so into the match, we hooked our first fish. Now, I had started short, but hadn't been successful one skimmer, so I've gone out on the long line that I'd fed, and I hooked this carp. Now, I was absolutely convinced that it's foul hooked because the float came out of the water, you know, a couple of feet before I connected with the fish, but it was playing like a fish that was hooked in the mouth, and it turns out that it was a fish that was hooked, foul hooked, just in the bottom lip. So the hook was outside of the mouth, so it was just a lucky place to foul hook it, where you've got some level of control over it. Like I say, this was on the deck, this was an on the deck rig, and the fish wasn't on the deck, and I'm already getting the feeling that it's a day where the fish want to come into really, really shallow water. And I feel like if the sun had been out, I might have had a few muggers visible, but a lot of these fish were giving me indications on the deep rig, but they're definitely, I was getting lots of indications, but it was not really bites, and so I'm already thinking I'm going to catch these fish shallow, or can I catch these fish shallow? So you join us now an hour and a half into the match. At this point, we've got 2 carp in the bag for £11. We've got a couple of skimmers in the silvers bag. Both of the carp were hooked shallow, and so I'm convinced that the fish are shallow. So you can see me here. I'm going out and trying to slap a rig, feeding over the top as well. But as you can see, it's just fruitless. Even though I do seem to foul hook or contact carp that are shallow when I've got a full depth rig on, can't seem to catch them with a slapping rig, and I do feel like they're coming into the feed because they're there, but just can't make it work. It's quite frustrating. So we are 2.5 hours in, and I've been forced to go down to this left-hand margin, this long left-hand margin, a bit quicker than I would have liked. As you can see, I just landed a tench. So this, I've had 2 skimmers before this tench, and all I've done is big potted maggots down there, and I go over that line with a toss pot full of maggots, and every now and again, if I feel like I'm not getting bites fast enough, I put another big pot in. But all I can seem to catch at this point is skimmers. Obviously you've seen that tench, but he was the only one that I had during this period of the match. I can't seem to get through to any carp. Now, as I said earlier, that there's obviously signs that the carp are very shallow, and I'm not having much success catching them out long, but I could think about coming in the edge and trying to come shallower in the edge and catching the edge shallow. My experience, when carp are shallow out long, if they are coming close in, you can catch them in the edges, and it's a good place to catch them. But on this peg, like quite a few of the pegs on this bank, there's a lot of rock, proper rocks in the margin, and the margins going from the shallowest water all the way down to the deepest water, and they're full of rocks, and you can't really fish and feed effectively on them. And so I'm starting to think now, the writing's on the wall already, even though I'm only 2.5 hours in, that I'm not going to be able to line any carp up. But I'm just sticking at it for a bit with these skimmers. Obviously I fast forwarded this, but this is what was coming out of that margin. And just fingers crossed I get some carp later on. So an hour later, and I've hooked this carp, been out on the line straight in front of me on the deck, because I've obviously kept on pinging meat over that longer line whilst I was down in that margin. Had this fish in the net, look, but he definitely weren't hooked properly, and I paid the price for not scooping him out properly on that first go. So as I was saying, I hooked him out on that long line, giving that edge line a rest. And this kind of gave me a bit of license to, again, to have another little go at fishing shallow, trying a few different things, just to see whether these fish had turned up. Like I said, I pinged meat on it. I felt like, after I come off it, I thought if I ping meat over it, perhaps that'll, you know, line up the fish a bit more. If they want to be really shallow, that slower falling meat, maybe they can swim around in it and I can gather some in the area. But as you can see from the footage, it was yet again fruitless, and very little was happening for me. 1 hour to go now, and I finally hooked a carp over the maggots down the left hand line. And I'm thinking, yes, finally now, we've got a carp. It's going to happen, because what happens generally on this lake is if you can get them on the big carp on the maggot, then they usually are the better carp in the lake, and you can put a big weight together at the end because the fish are sort of all doubles. This one's not that big, but it didn't stop me thinking, right, it's time for us to have a fast finish now and maybe sneak up, work our way up the leaderboard a little bit. Sadly for me, it was a day where there seemed to be just smaller stamp fish. So the carp that I did catch were not the 12-pound plus carp that I've been catching. I've been catching 12, 15, 18, even 20-pound carp doing this recently. It just didn't turn up, proving more in my mind that the fish definitely wanted some shallow water to feed in the better fish today, and I've just not been able to catch them in that shallow water. I did need some of these big lads to turn up on the maggots, and it's just not happened. And also to top that up, the carp did even push the silvers out, and as the match as you'll see in a second, as it's worn on, I've actually still carried on picking up silvers. So by the end of the match, the first round, I've ended up last in section with 36 pounds and 3 ounces, and I've actually had 15 pound of silver. So I've only had 20 pound of carp, which is one of the lowest carp weights I've had on this lake this year. Might be the lowest carp weight I've had on this lake this year. And it's got to be the first time I've ever come last overall. And to rub salt into the wound, I wasn't even last overall on the lake. I was last overall on the complex. So the whole festival, first day, I was in last place. So you couldn't have asked for a worse start. Luckily for me, there is a dropper, so you do get to drop your worst result. So that means the festival isn't over for me just yet, although my chance of a win is limited, because your dropper does come in on countback. So chances are it's going to affect my result, but at least I'm not out of it totally. And going into day two is not a total disaster. And we're on the opposite bank for day two on the same lake, and the pegs there are better and the fishing's better, so fingers crossed I can have a better day. So into the second day, and we are on the opposite bank of the main lake. This is peg 13. I've been fishing for about 8 minutes, and I've had this fish on the method. So I thought I'd start on the method. Every time I've started short on whatnot, all I've seemed to have got is skimmers, and it's not really been right, so it's paid off. My section runs from peg 15 to peg 10 today. Peg 15 is a flyer on this section, and George, who did well yesterday on peg 1's drawn that, so I'm worried about George on peg 1. And then Dave Romain, who's probably the best angler in our section, he's down on peg 10, and he's got a lot of room to his right. I'm not sure how that's going to pan out for him, so I'm also worried about him, but I'm quite happy with this as a draw. It's not a bad peg. So sort of a medium-sized carp there for ship lake. You know what they're like in here, they're units. So as you can see, I was actually fishing ground bait in the feeder, which is not something that a lot of people do. I'm just looking to nick a fish. I've not put any feed in or anything at this point, so I'm just putting ground bait on really firm onto the bottom of the feeder to create a nice bed. Then I'm going to put in a nice wafter on there, and then just covering it with ground bait. The ground bait that I'm using is my own little mix of Tom's Edge Mix and Tom's Intelligence Green. I like to mix them roughly 50-50. I think this one's got a little bit more Edge Mix in it. It's not always brilliant for sticking to a mould, that particular mix, but for this sort of feeder, it's okay. And you're packing it on firm, but with the Edge Mix in, it does break down pretty quick. It'll get to the bottom and it'll break down nice, and that's what I want. And just a little show there. So you see, I'm just chucking it reasonably close to the middle of the lake. I clip quite high above my head because I am trying to sort of build an area and if I hit the clip high above my head, I can get some line on the reel so that I don't get done by these big fish, but I don't have to take the clip off. Anyway, an hour later now, and I've not had any more carp on it. I think I lost one. So I'm trying something that I've not done here before, but something that I've seen other people do, and I thought I'd give it a go at on the Shiplake main lakes. I feel like it's something that would work on this lake, sort of open water, big carp. Give them a reason to be there. So as you can see, I've swapped my feeder over to a feeding feeder, and I'm putting some 6mm pellets in. These are new from Preston. They go onto your not the pellets. The feeder's new from Preston. It goes onto your ICS system, so you can just swap it out. So I'm fishing on the same clip as I was, and the same rod as I was that you saw me using a few moments ago. And then what I do is I just chuck this out onto the spot. Just showing you me do it. I'm just showing you me doing one here, but I think I did 5, maybe even 6 of them, and just built up an area. And the hope was that some fish would settle over that. And I'm going to give it a rest and drop onto my sort of long pole line. And then when I feel like it's had long enough, I'll have a little look over it. But it was something different, worth a try. Long pole line. I think I'm fed it with meat on the day. Maybe meat and pellets, no ground bait or anything like that. But as usual, especially early in the match at Shiplake, if you're fishing on the bottom, out long on the long pole, you tend to get skimmers. So there were skimmers there, and I persisted at them for some time during the middle of the match. But I was concerned because I could see on the far bank, on the other section, people were mugging really well on pegs 6 and 7. There was a lot of carp showing on 6 and 7, and they were catching mugging, and I was wondering, with Dave Romain sitting opposite on peg 10, whether he was being able to get a few muggers as well. There wasn't anywhere near enough fish in my swim visible for me to even consider mugging. But they apparently up there, and it was solid with them. So, as I said, a bit later on, I went back onto this feeder line because I wanted to see whether or not I could see that there was fish out there with some fizzing on it, so I knew I'd had a chance, and I chucked the feeder back out and it went round pretty quickly. I did actually lose one before this fish. I hooked it and just the hook pulled out near the net, but another carp on. I'm pretty happy really with that, because normally you get a couple of early fish on the long and then it's hard. And the beauty with what I'm doing here is I can fish past where most people fish on this lake. Most people fish at a distance that's comfortable to fire pellets, and obviously the carp get used to that and they come in when they want to feed, but when they don't want to feed, they don't come in there. And so by going a bit longer to perhaps where they are and putting a bed of food in front of them, my thinking is that some of them will have a munch on it. To be fair, this was something I was experimenting with on the day, and I've not done it a lot, so I was winging it a bit, but it seemed to be working. It's a good fish, this one. Taking my time because every fish is going to count in these sections. They're going to be tight. So throughout the day, I kept dropping onto the longer pole line and switching between that and the feeder line. And on occasion, I think I did top the feeder line up with some more feeder falls a couple of times as well. It never really got going anywhere. Odd fish, a lot of skimmers on both lines. And in the end, skimmers sort of invaded the feeder line as well, and I was dragging skimmers back sort of 40 metres or whatever it was. So it really wasn't worth. Or it really wasn't worth it. It was better off staying on the pole line for the middle of the day. Eventually, when I came down the left-hand edge, I had one. This is one really good fish that I had from down the left-hand margin, feeding maggots and a bit of ground bait, I think. Trying different hook baits to see what was what. I actually hooked this one on a wafter because I felt like fish were coming into the swim, but they weren't taking the bait. It was almost like they couldn't find it. And so I thought, well, I'll try one of these wafters. They're quite bright and the fish seem to find them pretty quickly, and I was surprised that I got a bite on it. I did try it a few more times and didn't get as many bites on it in the end, but it got me this nice big lump. So I had a couple of fish from down that left-hand edge. It wasn't brilliant, but I also caught a few fish short in front of me on a short line. I started to feed a bit shorter with pellets. You have to go out a little bit on these pegs because it's not, the shell's quite far out in front of you on sort of pegs 12, 13, that area of this lake. And I found that I could catch a few fish on that line, so I could catch one from down the edge and one from there, and just it had to be sort of softly. You couldn't hammer them on the day, but that's helped me to build my weight. The silvers on the day give me another £20 in the bag and managed to push me up to I think it was £98 and 2 ounces, which was actually third in the section, but I ended up getting awarded second because poor old George on peg 15 had gone over in one of his nets and been disqualified from that net, which is a shame for him. It's a bit of a hollow result for me, but you know, I hate to see that, but the rules are the rules, and they're there to protect the fish, so you can't argue about it. But it just meant that I had a second now, so I could forget about my last on the first round. I got a second, and I felt like my festival's back on. So all we've got to do now is back it up with a good result tomorrow. Today we're on the third round of the Shiplake 4-day festival. We're on Westpool. We've drawn peg 5, which is kind of in the middle, but there's not a lot of angle. We're on angle down in our section today because our anglers hasn't been able to fish. So that's head and peg there, George on the end peg. Very fancy peg. And then there's an angler here, John, another angler, Dave, and another angler on the end who I can't remember the name. But we've all got plenty of room. It could be a good match, but it's been fished. It fished very, very well yesterday. Big, decent weights, hundreds of pounds, £130 sort of weights coming off it. Which, you know, compared to when you look at the main lake weights, they were £200, but the fishing here aren't as big. Not, you know, you need more bites for that weight. So with that in mind, in here we've made a little bit of a guano mix up there, so we've got some micros that I grabbed off the fishery because I've run out of my own. Got some 6mm MB1s in there, and I've got a pint of dead maggots in there. And just mixed it all up with loads and loads of water. I want it heavy and wet. I'm just going to feed pretty positive to start with, and then go straight over, put a big, not a full big pot, but maybe half a big pot in, and just go over with a rig and just see if we can hook what we can hook. Maybe we've got to come down the shelf and work out how to catch them. It's going to be foul because there's going to be problems. It's going to be a pain probably if it fishes like I expect it to fish. But then I've also got short line, so I've got a top kitten 1, which is at the bottom of the nearest slope. Actually, it's over to my left a little bit in line with that tree there, which I can throw. I might throw some 6mm on. And then down this edge I've got an edge line at top kitten 2 and edge kitten, top kitten 3, and I've got rigs for like sort of 18 inches, and then I've got a really shallow rig, which is the same rig as over there. It's really shallow over there, but in here there's some nice flattish areas about 18 inches deep, which I'm hoping to catch on. And that's it. I'm hoping it's going to be really positive. So lots of bites, short fishing. I'm not set up anything for straight down the middle. I mean, I might have to do something in the middle of the match if it's absolutely rock hard, but I feel like straight in the middle is just going to be scratching. I've got to win my section if I want any chance of picking up money in this event. So it's positive now. It's all guns blazing. Shit or bust. Let's go for it. Catch you in a bit. Well, I thought I'd start the cameras at the start of the match today. Just a few fish started to show shallow straight in front of me, which is nice. What I'm doing, I'm just going in here with a big pot of bait, because I was tipped off that sometime, or what happened yesterday was fish came in the edge early. So keep an eye on that. Because if the fish want to come and have a feed short early, then that'll be the place to catch them. And then I'm going to be a little bit less aggressive across. I'm going to just put this. I feel like there's probably fish already over there. Just got to try and get them around the update. So I'll put that in. 6mm on the hook. Really. I'm not going to feed that long because I can't quite see the spot. The light's changed. I can't quite see the spot there. The shipping's all up because I've got a high bank behind me. So that's life. I'm going to pop away from the edge a little bit.
few inches away, and I'm going to put the rig behind it, so close to the bank of the rig than I am with the bait. Just sit and settle, just see if anything comes in. That one's at it. It's a bit long, just want to get the bait out. Try to get the bait out. As that bell, see if it's gone in. See that pellet's gone in. It's at it. And that's come out of the pot a bit shorter, that's fine. It took us 3 puts, just in case of getting a few fish there, I think. Right mixture of size of fish in here, so you never know quite what you're going to catch. Pulling quite well. I'll break it down now. Hopefully he's not far locked. Looked himself, that's what I'm trying to, if I'm honest, I'm trying to get him to hook themselves, because I feel like I'm going to foul up fish, a bit less fish that way. I'm just holding a tight line. I'm just hopeful that give him time, no rush. Almost sure now this fish is up properly. It's by the way he's playing, but you can never tell. He might be close to or around the mouth or not up clean, so if you pull his head off. And that mistake yesterday, luckily it didn't cost me any section points because I was never going to be anywhere near first. Could have done on a different day, and it does do some days. It's another good reason for me not to fish my short line right in front of my nets, because it's never going to be settled down there. I'm having a good day's fishing. Look at this colour of the water. If you look on the end of my elastic, there's a section of it that's doubled up. I like to do that now. That's stripped a lot of elastic out. There's not a lot of stretch in the elastic, but that last piece has got quite a bit of stretch still left in it. It just takes out some of those head shakes and gives you a better chance. Obviously you still lose fish, but it gives you a better chance of not losing fish. That makes sense. Could be an R-mate day today. Decent fish this is. Very much. I'm trying to test everything out today, trying to lift these fish over the top of that ledge. Nicely hooked. You definitely had it properly. Red pellets definitely made a difference. It's going to go late. Right, we're 2 hours 45 minutes in and I'm up to £29 on the car. I persevered with what I started doing for quite some time, but it's very quickly stopped working. And I've dropped off that, gone down in margin for a quick early look, had nothing, tried deeper water, had nothing. The guy to my left is just chucking the method feeder into the open water, catching. So I tried feeding the open water and going over the top of it, didn't really have any luck. So I've gone back over to this far bank. I still ain't had much success. So what I've done is I've changed my rig, changed to a heavier rig. And stop putting in my guano mix. And just tapping in little taps of 6mm pellet. And with a 6mm on the hook, saying, match the action sounds what I'm feeding. Picking up hard fish. Been hard to get them there. Feel like I'm getting them there now. I'm getting a few fish there now. Right guys, we've got 1 hour and a half to go. We've only got £56 on the clip. I feel like John next to me's probably got 150 minimum. Guy to my right's definitely got more than me as well. I've come down the edge and I've started to put a few fish in this swim, in my peg, in my net, but it's slow and steady winning the race. Try not to get sunburn on the bum. You might not be able to see much because I'm right in the edge here. What I'm basically doing is feeding the edge with a pot. As close as I can like this. And then I'm putting the pole in the left hand and dragging the rig in even closer. There's a fish right in there at the moment. Dragging that rig right in there and get it in. There's so many fish down there at the moment. And I've got it set now with a very short lash so it's tight to the rig. I've got a big pellet air rigged that stands out and I'm just letting the fish yank the elastic out rather than trying to strike it and it's absolute carnage down there. There we are, that's what happens, because everything's so tight when one puts that hook bait in its mouth, it just pricks itself against the end of the pole. And you've got less luck, you still can foul hook, but it's just so much less likely. I'll just catch steady like that and put 4 or 5 pounders in. I might have to do something, but it's hard. Try to line them up today. Not big fish. I've got nothing to fish for regarding the festival, so sorry, it was a 4-day festival at Shit Lake's the last day, and I've had a 6th, a 5th, so our last is 6th, I've had a 5th, and I've had a 2nd. So I'm miles out of it. There's people with 3 firsts, people with 2 firsts, and lots of seconds. I'm nowhere near it. So I'm just fishing today for the super pools, which I'm in the super pools, and a bit of a section money or whatever else I can get. So it's more of a fun day's fishing to try and help out and make sure I don't want to be one of them people that don't turn up and ruin the festival for everybody else. So what I've done is I've set up a method feeder here, so I'm going to start fishing with ground bait and on the feeder. Well, I made that choice based on what I've seen throughout the week and what people have caught on and what they haven't caught on. I think I would catch with pellet, don't actually have any micro pellet. I've used them all up on this festival and I've not got them with me, and I thought I'm not going to buy any more. I've got loads of ground bait with me, I'm going to try them. So that's that line. I'll be swinging it under that willow tree over there, and probably I'll be sticking at this for a couple of hours. I've got a one line down the middle, which if I fish, it will probably be big pots of maggots. I'll probably wait at least an hour and a half before I put any feeder out, then I'll put a big pot of maggots in and let it settle, and then occasionally I'll top it up, and when I do go on it, expect to catch pretty quick or not at all. And then right down here on the top kit, they catch on this swim in the top kit, and peg 9, I'm on peg 9 on Hawthorns, so I've got a top kit line down here which I'm going to put. Again, I've got ground bait to the method. I've got the same ground bait mix to use down the edge, but I can just wet it up a little. Once I've come to put it down the edge, I might make it a little bit heavier because I like it on the dry side on the method so that it doesn't stick to your mould, and so it, it breaks up quicker. But down the edge you want it a bit heavier, although it's quite a shallow edge, so it won't matter that much. I might even just squeeze it into a ball, but it's a bit slopey. So I'm fishing on, I'm fishing up against the slope in the edge. It's real rooty and nasty down there, so I need a bit of luck. Hopefully I'll find a spot where, I've found a spot where there's no roots and no issues, and we'll see what we can do. So in the ideal world, we'll fish the method and we'll stay on it until 2 hours from the end when we'll come down the edge and empty it. In reality, the way that's not, things haven't been panning out like that, and we might have to have a look down the middle, we might have to, mess about with different things. But there's all in, let's just crack on. I'm not going to feed anything except the method feeder, I've already got it ready. Standard size, 30 gram. Preston method feed, ICS system, for those that care about those not that technical aspects, I've got it clipped up in my usual manner, where I could unclip once I've hit the clip, put the rod down, but I've got the clip beyond. I've got a stop knot on the clip so that I can clip it to the same spot every time.
Yeah, I had a couple of fish on the method feeder. I had 5 fish for about 12 pounds, so they were quite small fish, but things got slower and slower, and it weren't long before I had to go down the middle on the pole over the maggots that I potted in. I remember I said I was going to pot some maggots down the middle. I went over that quite early, didn't really get a bite over it. Did have lots of indications and signs of fish shallow, but I did waste 15 minutes trying to catch those shallow fish, but also that wasn't happening. So I had to go back out onto the method, and I altered the clip position a bit and just went a little bit tighter. But I had to be careful because I was obviously risking getting hung up in the tree that I was fishing underneath. But this risk did pay off, and I landed a 5 pounder, which pushed my weight up to about 17 pound. Yeah, that one's on. So going a bit tighter has definitely helped. It's helped me hook a couple more fish, and it seems like another better fish, better stamp fish, this one. Better than those first sort of 5 small ones that I had.
How many fish are there and how many lines are you getting? Look at that, that's on. That one's on. Did that red pellet work in the end then? Small fish. It's not that big orange one that was there. It's got a nice tail, this one, but it is the orange one. It is the orange one. See, this orange one keeps coming in, doesn't it? Well, he doesn't look as bright. Maybe there's another one. It looks bright, but not as bright as the one that was coming in. Yeah, the one that was looking, that's bigger than him and brighter than him, and yeah, heavier than him. Much heavier than him. He's only another 3 pound, isn't he? Ooh, he's gone heavier than I thought he was. He's definitely gone 4. Well, there we are.
So anyway, joined me down the edge. I noticed that George, on the peg to my left, he had a couple in his edge quite early, so I decided to have a look early down my edge and see what might be lurking down there. I had 2 more fish for £12, and then I hooked this one, which turned out to be about £8, so that's taking me up to £50. Sadly, the weather moved in and it's made filming after this really hard, and I wasn't able to capture any usable footage. The fishing down the edge didn't really happen, but did go out in the last hour on that line down the middle with the big potted maggots, and that managed to help me push my weight up to about £90. I did have a good run down the middle and I was catching fish really well. So I've weighed £90, and believe it or not, this has still only beat one person in my section again. So I've weighed £90 over the 3 times I've weighed £90 over the 4-day festival, and I've come nowhere. So it just shows you how well the venue is fished. But one thing's for sure, I definitely didn't get it right this time. See you again soon, guys. Tune in for the next one.